Do you remember growing your first $900 tomato and thinking, gosh, if I just had gone to the grocery store, it would have been way cheaper? Yeah, same. But we are not doing that anymore. Welcome to the Food, Farm, and Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Graff, and together we are going to build our farms, homesteads, and gardens without destroying our finances. So let's get that bag of soil and money. Welcome to another episode of the Food, Farm, and Finance Podcast, the podcast that aims to help you grow your gardens, farms, and dreams without destroying your finances. I am your host, Austin Graff, creator and founder of Buzz Blooms, which I am aware means probably nothing to you, but that's okay. Go check me out on Instagram. I give garden tips and tricks, and tell me that you saw my podcast. Well, I don't video this podcast, because I have voice for radio, not face for television. But tell me that you've listened and let me know what you like. And if you like it at all, that would be great. All right, today we are getting into something that's really, really fun. We're talking about making money. That's right, we're going to make money in this episode. So pretty much all of these things, I have 5 ways to potentially start earning income from your farm and your garden. Even a little backyard garden could do this. So these are all things that I have done in my business and in my personal life, and I have tried out, and some have worked great, some have, I've got questions. But I think all of these 5 options are really great opportunities to start making money and start earning from your farm and garden. I think a lot of people think that gardens provide vegetables and produce, sure, but that's what they're going to get out of the investment. But not necessarily true. It can be a business venture, and I am so excited to get into this episode. But first, a little message from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is... Just kidding. We still don't have one of those. But if I did, I would hope you'd really just love that sponsor, support them, because that is the future way that I'm going to be able to continue to do these podcasts economically and make sure that we can keep these guys free and all this information free so people can start farming and gardening to their heart's desire while sticking to a budget and making sure their financial dreams are not ruined because they went out and bought 75,000 alpacas. That's a lot of alpacas. 75,000 alpacas. There might not even be that many alpacas in the US. Enough about alpacas. Let's get back to garden businesses. This list that I've created, a lot of this is more suited for people who have larger farms. But there's quite a bit of this that can also be done just in the backyard. So I guess it's 50-50, which is honestly perfect. That's the perfect blend because I want this to be great for anyone who just has the tiniest amount of space, but also great for people who have like 35 acres and they're like, let's dream big, Carl. Again, I have done every single one of these and they are all work. So we will probably start breaking down in more episodes in the future, really, really granular details on each of these. And we could maybe even do some interviews. So if you're interested in interviewing, please reach out, send me a little email, a little message, because I want people to not just be on budget in their garden, but I want their gardens to really work for them. I want their farms to really produce them income because this is a great way to set yourself up for success. I think a lot of what I'm going to be talking about on this podcast in general is about how we cut costs, but I want everyone to also be working towards earning more income so that it's less important to cut those costs, right? So you can have a little more discretionary income to do a few more of these things you want in your garden and on your farm. So the first item on my list is value-added products, okay? Whoa, wow, this is a huge umbrella, right? So that's why I'm saying maybe we can get a little more granular, including what type of value-added products. But what value-added products simply means is, say, example, in your garden, you are growing zucchini. You got like boatloads of zucchini, and you know that you have forgotten a couple zucchinis, and they've gotten gigantic, and you're just like, what am I doing with all these zucchinis? So you take those zucchinis, you shred them down, and you make zucchini muffins. And then you take those zucchini muffins, and you sell those zucchini muffins. So you have added value to that zucchini, right? Nobody wanted that big humongous big zucchini. It was probably going to taste tragic and fibrous and disgusting, but everybody's jamming on those zucchini muffins. And that is the whole concept of value-added products, and it works in a bunch of different ways. So something like if you had dairy goats, for example, value-added products might be, you have the raw milk from the dairy goat. All right, cool. That's not a value-added product. But if you take that milk and you turn it into soap and skincare products, those are value adds. And you can do this with so many things in the garden. What I think of a lot when I think value-added products that come from the garden are a lot of times baked goods and food items, because gardens produce food, canned goods, salsas, relishes, those sort of things, chutneys. Ooh, I love a good old-fashioned chutney. Sidebar, I'm not even 100% sure what a chutney is, but I know I like them. And if you know what a chutney is, please tell me in the comments so that I can be a little more educated on chutney. But that is the whole concept of value adds on products. So basically, what you would be doing is you would be taking your small garden and your small farm, you'd assess what you already have and what you could potentially make out of those items to make more money from. So you could really do this with anything. It really depends on what your farm is, what you're growing. I think a great example of this, and I do this myself, and I own a tea business, which I'll drop in the show notes so you can go check that out. But I harvest a lot of my excess herbs in the garden and incorporate those in herbal tea blends, which I then sell. That would be a value-added product. Even though it's just the raw loose herb, I mix it with other herbs and tea blend. You could do it with spices, not splices, spices, splices. I derailed myself yet again. It's a really simple concept. I think the drawbacks to value-added product businesses are it takes time, right? It is going to distract from your farm. It's going to distract from your garden. You are basically taking these items and launching a product-based business, which is a lot more work than some of these others, in my opinion. But it might be perfect, and I think that's where a lot of farms find success in long-term plans. And you could do this on a small scale in your backyard garden. Like I said, for that tea business example, which I run, it does not take a huge square foot, like meter. It does not take a large square footprint, not meter. I don't know why I'm talking in meters. Let me just tell you, I do not understand meters, just like I don't understand chutney. So it doesn't take a large footprint in your garden to create systems that could promote value-added products. Literally one zucchini plant, a couple herbs. There are so many options. If you are struggling to figure out what you could do in your space, if you have, a garden, send me some questions. Find me on Instagram at BuzzBlooms and DM me some questions and say, this is what I have. Do you have any ideas on value-added product launches that I could do to start making some money? I do think it's a great option. Next up, we have CSAs. Now, if you don't know what a CSA is, you're not alone. A CSA is community supervised agriculture, and that is not like a prison thing. I thought, when I first got into this, I thought community supervised agriculture, I thought that's what it was. It's not. I'm so sorry. It's community supported agriculture. It's not community supervised agriculture. I thought this whole time, not today, but like most of my life, I thought it was community supervised agriculture, and I thought it was like where people were like being rehabbed and like they would go to farms and then they would like learn new skills, and I thought that was like such a great model. Someone should do that. I did not have one of those. I had a community supported agriculture program, a CSA. And community supported agriculture is just where basically they buy in. So you can diversify your risk a lot on the farm. So say I grow all these vegetables. My CSA was a flower CSA. So I grow all these flowers, but you could do vegetables, you could do flowers, whatever you have on your farm. You can even add in eggs, dairy products, and basically you sell shares. So each each one of your customers would buy a percentage of the farm share. So they're buying some of the bounty of your farm. And what's great about this is they give you money up front. So my CSA was like maybe anywhere in the range of $200 to $500, depending on which level you chose. And you got fresh flowers every single week all through the season. And basically it gives you startup capital at the beginning of the season, so you can buy all your seeds, you can get your beds prepped, all this stuff, and then you just fulfill. So it's almost like you have a standing, standing order. You're just not getting any revenue on the back end. Everyone gives you money on the front end, which is a really nice model because capital investment is a huge issue in the small garden farm space. There are some drawbacks to this model for sure. First and foremost, not everyone has the money to just support a CSA like that and to give $500 at the beginning of the season. So you are a lot of times looking for a customer that really, really values and supports your dream and your vision. So you got to really, really sell it and share, what the whole goal is. And you also need to make sure that they understand the risk involved. So CSAs, community supported agriculture, basically if your farm does poorly and you do not have good growing weeks, the idea is that that farm helps spread out the risk. What I mean is each of these mini investors, so to speak, will take on a portion of that risk. So if they don't get the farm box because there was a natural disaster and a giant flood, they say, oh, okay, this is part of it. We're here to support this farm in general. So, we're not worried about getting our produce. That is amazing in theory. In practice, that is not how I found that it actually happens. Turns out people still want refunds even when something horrible happens. So there's a ton of pressure to constantly fulfill and make sure that you are delivering those items every single week on schedule, on time. And then I also found a lot of people, they just wouldn't pick up. And I'm like, why would you spend money and not pick up? So I would have a pickup location designated. I would partner with local businesses and they would pick up from there. And then inevitably, we would have people that would say, I can't make it. Could you hold it a couple days? And it's like, no, that's actually not how we do things, because that business that was kind enough to let you pick up there is only going to let you pick up there today. They don't want to store your stuff for the next week. They are an operating business. So there is a lot of little gray areas. If you have space in your home, in your farm, your garden, to where people could pick up there, that might be better. For me, I'm so rural that people were like, we are not driving all the way out there. That's just not going to happen. But some benefits of a program like this are you could really, really start this small. You could start with just 5 boxes. You could even start saying we're not going to do scheduled boxes, but when we have garden surplus, we're going to put little CSA boxes up for sale, which at that point, it would really just be a produce box. That's a buy now box. But I think it's a really good model for someone who's just starting out trying to make some money from their garden. And it really builds and fosters relationships with your community and people around you. So it's a great way to have that really community feel. So consider doing this in your backyard. Absolutely. I did find success with it. It's where I started with the flower farm. It's where I really started getting cranking, and it was what helped make sure I was pumping out over 100 bouquets a week from my farm. But what happened was it got a lot. It was a lot to stay on top of it, to plan it, to make sure we were fulfilling all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just know that a CSA model can be a lot of pressure, and you need to deliver on that. Otherwise, you're going to have very upset people. So definitely worthwhile, but you really need to know that if you're doing this, you are starting a business. It is not just a one-off thing. You're committing to doing business with them in this way for an entire season a lot of times, sometimes multiple seasons. Also, it is not called community supervised agriculture. My bad. I said it because I used to call it that, and that is not it. But I do think community supervised agriculture is maybe not the worst plan, all right? Let's talk about how great that could be. So if you want to do that and you want to build that out, I am sure we could find you some nonprofit dollars to get that cranking. I think that is an amazing idea, and I know it's already happening all over the country, but you could be that in your community. It would be amazing. So, worth considering. Next up, this one is kind of the pinnacle of what everybody and their mama wants to do. If you have a lot of space, this one's probably more for you. If you are growing on the shelf in your apartment, this one is not going to be realistic or practical for you, but it is agritourism / farm stays / events. So agritourism is a huge booming sector. I think a lot of times when we see agritourism, the first thing we see is weddings, because weddings have just been popping off. I mean, everybody loves a good old country hoedown wedding. And I think it's actually hilarious because the idea of all these like kind of country themed weddings, and it's like, these weddings are not grassroots. These weddings cost literally more than my house. And wow, just wow. The wedding industry is wild. I've worked in the wedding industry as a flower farmer, and woo, it's crazy out there. Anyway, so it can be done. Agritourism can be done, but it does not just have to be weddings. So my family in upstate New York has a pumpkin patch, and it's a fall farm. So people come up to the farm, they pick their pumpkins, they walk through a corn maze, they sell handmade, apple pies, and cider donuts. If you have never had a cider donut, those will change your life. Let me tell you what. They are so good. Apple cider donuts are my favorite donut, and I mean, so good. So good. So there are a lot of different options. I think a lot of people have seen a lot of success in the wedding space for agritourism and in those fall farm spaces, but there are so many options. If you happen to have an apple orchard just chilling in your backyard, go ahead and start a You Pick apple. If you want to, do You Pick flowers, that's been growing in popularity. These tulip bulb farms have been popping up everywhere, where they literally just plant fields and fields and fields of tulips, and then they charge people to come onto the farm and harvest tulips and take pictures. So there are so many opportunities with agritourism. It's a huge growing sector. The thing is with agritourism is you really need the space to do it. You need the infrastructure. It can be very expensive to start. So odds are, if you're listening to this, you might not be in that spot yet, but some of these other items on this list could help bolster your farm to get you to that agritourism space. There's also grants in the state of Tennessee, which is where I am based out of. They do have classes and they have grants that will cost share for agritourism. So you can literally take these classes and they will pay up to 50% for you to do infrastructure things like install a parking lot for your business, or even build a pavilion or things like that. Now those grants are changing all the time, so I could be very, very outdated on that, but I do think there are a wealth of resources out there for agritourism funding, and I think it's a great model. So the whole concept here with agritourism is that your farm and garden is not solely reliant on the products. So a lot of agritourism places do supply products, right? Lots of value-added products. They are trying to sell you things when you go there, which is critical and key. But a ton of this is really based on simply experience, right? They are selling an experience. They are selling something fun to do. And I think that something fun to do tends to weather economic challenges a lot better than product businesses. And that is not an economist saying that. That is good old Austin in his little bedroom recording this podcast, right? But I just think in general, people are definitely apt to spend money to make some memories with their family and enjoy things. So I think it's a great, very lucrative option for farms if they can do it and have the space to do it. And in that same umbrella, you could do farm stays if you have the additional space, Airbnb on the farm. This is a huge, huge industry. So I know those things are not necessarily applicable for a small backyard garden, but I do think those are goals, right? Like those are really high level goals, and you could really, really make a very profitable business, and that could become your entire livelihood if you are interested. Next up, we have something that literally anybody can do. And I know that for a fact because I do it. And I started out with not any space. I started out renting land. So to do anything like this was a challenge, but I started out doing workshop classes. And that really helped. So workshop classes are an amazing way to make some money from your garden and from your farm. And this is applicable to anyone. You don't even have to have a garden space. You could be someone who loves plants in your apartment, who grows lettuce on the windowsill. Workshop classes and education are a huge, growing, fast industry. And they're so easy. And by easy, I don't mean like it's easy to put together and coordinate and to sell tickets. No, that's not it. But by easy, I mean it's really, really easy to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this workshop class. And then you set it up and bada bing, bada boom. And it's easy to do one-offs without a lot of commitment. Some things like the CSA and the agritourism and value-added products, those are things you really, really have to stick with and stay consistent with. And you have so much tied up into it. But these workshop classes, it's not that much risk to try one and see how it goes, right? And if that goes well, you try another one. And if that goes well, you try another one. So as a flower farmer, florist, gardener, farmer, a couple of my workshop classes, I did a holiday wreath making class with live greens every year. That was probably my most popular workshop. I would usually do a couple classes of that. I even did a couple private classes where I would go into private residencies and they would host it, kind of like their little Christmas party for the gals. And we would create these wreaths in their home, which honestly gave me a lot of anxiety because wreath making with live greens is messy, 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 and sappy, sappy, sappy. So here's me in like these really ritzy, fancy houses, desperately trying to like sweep up these pine needles and stuff. And I'm like, everybody keep your mess in your zone. It was a whole thing. But it does come with challenges. In general, workshop classes, are just a really great opportunity. I also did succulent pumpkin workshop classes. So I'd grow my pumpkins and then I would order in succulent cuttings. And then I would show people how to make these gorgeous succulent pumpkin arrangements for the fall. And so many other things like that, floral classes, etc. And you can do this with anything. If you have a little bit of backyard garden space, you can do a vegetable growing class. You can do an herb growing class. You can do herb potting class. Like there's so many options with these workshop classes. You just have to think, what do I know a bit of? And the thing is, I think a lot of people get imposter syndrome. They're like, I don't know anything. And maybe that's true in some regards. Sorry, Charles. If you know a bit more than the average Joe, like if you know a little more than the average bear on a subject, you are equipped to host a workshop class, okay? Let me give you a for instance. The amount that I know about fainting goats is kind of obscene. I am not a fainting goat expert. I just think they're so cute and cuddly and fun, and I added some to the farm. So now I know all this about Tennessee fainting goats, right? The average person knows nothing about Tennessee fainting goats other than they fall over. They also think they legitimately faint. They do not faint. They just kind of stiff up and they fall over. So I theoretically, if there were a demand for it, and who knows, if there is a demand for it, let me know in the comments. But I theoretically could host a masterclass workshop on fainting goats for the general public. Now, would an expert in fainting goats come to that class? No, they wouldn't. Would they probably know more than me? Yes, they would. But in general, I would still have a lot of wisdom and a lot of education to there would be so many things for me to share with this class that the average class would not know. So do not get in your head. Odds are you are more of an expert than you think, right? If you have successfully grown pumpkins year after year after year, and you want to do a little pumpkin workshop class for people, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not like a pumpkin growing expert. These people who are coming to that class likely have not even sown a pumpkin seed before. So by contrast, you are an expert, and they can easily make money. Like, these workshops can easily make money. Consider partnering with local businesses that have space. Ask if they can host the workshop. Or if you have a little backyard, ask if you can, well, you don't have to ask yourself, but do it in the backyard or something along those lines. I like to keep my events between 15 and 20 people because I can be very hands-on and it gives me time to be one-on-one with them. Ask a friend to help you with the workshop, help run it, and be a resource. It can be a really, really beneficial way to add a lot of money to your garden. I would charge regularly anywhere between $50 and $100 for those workshops, which means those workshops, which were taking me 1 to 2 hours, were generating between $750 to $2,000 depending on the class size and depending on how many people I had involved. So, or the price point I had. So it is really, really lucrative for really a day of work. You're setting it up, you're selling it, and then bada bing, bada boom. Now, it can be hard to get people to attend these, so you do have to have some marketing. So this is where the last little bit comes in that I think is so critical to all of this. And this is what I do, and this is why you're probably here. It is content creation. Now, I know that's not the cute little dreamy farm garden thing, but content creation is a great way to make money from your farm and garden. So, like all the other things I said above with value-added products, your CSA, your agritourism, workshop classes, all those things need to be promoted in some way, form, or fashion. So, you're probably going to have some social media to make sure that you're promoting those. So you're going to be doing that anyways. You're going to be putting yourself out into the world, trying to get people to buy into your products regardless of what you're doing. So that can be the challenge with all of those things is marketing. Marketing is such a difficult task, but social media and other outlets can make it a lot easier. And that is where I think this last piece could really, really come into play. So workshop classes are great, but imagine if you could just educate and teach everybody. And that's where content creation comes in. And that's what I do. I educate, well, sometimes. I mean, I did say a CSA was community supervised agriculture, which I thought was for prison systems. But I do my best to educate and teach and share. And through that, I create content. I create videos and I create podcasts and I create YouTube channels. And what I'm doing is aggregating information and sharing it to people. And that also subtly and very much not subtly promotes a lot of my products and my farm and garden. And that is what helps get me bookings for these workshops and what helps sell teas from my value-added tea business and what might one day help book farm stays if I, branch out into agritourism or book a farm to table if I wanted to do it. So it's all marketing, but at some point, that content creation can take over and also become a revenue driver as well. So if you can accrue and build any kind of following for this, because what you're doing is you're taking information and sizing it down in a way that people can ingest it and enjoy it, and they don't have to do loads of research, and that's wildly valuable on a farm and garden. So if you can build any sizable following, you can really, really make a lot from that. So maybe not always a ton of money, right? But you can start doing brand partnerships. So some of the tools and equipment that you need on the farm, you'll start maybe getting it for free if people take notice because they want you to promote it. And that can save you a lot of money on having to buy those tools for your farm and garden. You can also, as you grow, take on larger brand deals that pay you to post about their products and can really, really just a couple of those can really change your financial status. And all of this is done while building your farm brand and your garden brand if you would like to. So I think it can all work together. Content creation has a lot of places. You can use affiliate links. You can do so many different things. And I think it's something that would really make for a successful farm and garden. You basically are just teaching about it on the internet, and people who listen can then be marketed to. And I think that's a really great option. So I hope that this podcast episode was sort of helpful. I got a little rambly with the community supervised agriculture. And I am the Hot Mess Express, but I hope you found a lot of value in this episode, and there was a lot of different things that you would consider doing on your own farm. Like I said, in future episodes, we will definitely deep dive into the specifics of some of this a little more, and potentially even do some interviews with experts in the field on how they've done it and how they've managed to go full time, if that's something you're interested in. But regardless, there are loads of ways to make money from your farm and garden. And I really, really challenge you to make sure that your farm and garden is not just a burden, not just a financial burden, but a financial blessing that generates and produces not just food and products that you consume, but additional income by the sale of those products or by the sale of that knowledge base that you have accumulated. Remember that we are not out here to just tighten down our budgets. We're also out here to earn more so that we can live a lifestyle that we really, really want and enjoy. So I love that you were here today. As always, leave a comment, share this podcast, give me a review if it's nice. If it's not nice, maybe don't tell anybody. That would be great. Love y'all all, and I will see y'all next time.